Training camp time here in the NFL. Kevin Bowen back. Cheeks here. Didn't want to wake up with us last time, but he's up. Chris Presley, per usual. He's always on it, folks. We're in studio, Kevin's Corner, late Monday afternoon edition. Not something we usually do, but I'll explain, I guess, when I get into the training camp schedule, why we are recording right now. Today's pod will hit on position battles. A very topical conversation the last week of July around NFL training camps, even with the unusual nature that this is. And we have some Twitter questions left over. So, yeah, that'll be the focus today. But you have a good weekend, man?
I did. Spend it with the family. Tomorrow's my birthday, the big 3-0, so I had a little family birthday party because I share it with my nephew. So it was more of a 3-year-old birthday party than a 30-year-old birthday party. But, yeah, it was fun. Yourself?
What goes on at that sort of birthday party?
Like a lot of tractors and trucks and Nerf battles with the other nieces and nephews and pizza and cake. So
that sounds like the life, honestly, for me. So yeah. Well, happy early birthday to you.
Appreciate it.
And I'm sure you're glad you won't have to waste 2 hours of your day in the studio with the podcast. So, yeah, tomorrow's report day for the Colts. Veterans report. Jacob Eason and company already in town. Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, those guys reported last week. The Colts try to get their rookies to come in town a little bit earlier to try to get ahead of this. And I guess before we get into, we're going to get into kind of what training camp's going to look like, where we're at from a COVID ramification standpoint. I know it's not something I like to hit on a lot, but I think we just need to all have a general understanding of what this season could look like. And then we'll get into, like I said, the position battles and Twitter questions. I guess I'll start here, Chris. I don't know if this is a warning shot, but I think people just kind of get alarmed, and I'm not talking like Miami Marlins stuff alarm, but be prepared for some NFL players to test positive for COVID in the next few days. Like, these are 90-man rosters that have been in some hot spots around the United States, all coming back to their respective NFL teams. Some of them maybe have never gotten tested, maybe whatever, haven't gotten tested in the last couple of weeks, whatever. I have a feeling there might have been a going away party or two for some of these players, like there typically are. So, again, expect that. Like, don't be shocked by it. Now, am I expecting 20 per team? No. Would 5 or 10 per team shock me? Not at all.
Yeah.
So that's just par for the course, I think. Like, we've seen it with Major League Baseball. Well, unfortunately, we're still seeing it. We saw it with the NBA, back when those guys first got back to their respective cities. But again, I think it's just something that we should expect right now. So the schedule for what training camp will look like. Again, tomorrow is usually report day, and then their first practice would typically be Wednesday. What that looks like right now is they will COVID test tomorrow. They will COVID test Wednesday. No testing Thursday. Test again on Friday. And I believe I have this right. They won't be in the facility at all during those 4 days. They'll literally show up, get swabbed up, and that's it. They'll go home, do virtual stuff. Then they'll have physicals on Saturday and Sunday. And it looks like Monday would kind of be their first full day. A week from today, August 3rd, would be their first full day in the building doing some work together.
It's going to be very interesting, but like everything else,
And it's like, basically it's like spring and training camp. If they had a baby, this would be it.
Yep.
You're going to have a week-long strength conditioning starting August 3rd. That's kind of like phase one of your off-season program in the spring. And then August 12th through the 16th, you'll have the little ramp-up period, which I interpret that as like, think of individual stuff on the field, some 7-on-7, even 11-on-11 without full pads on. And then August 17th is your first full padded practice. Okay. So typically August 17th, you've played at least one preseason game. You're getting ready for a second. And that'll be the first day of even full padded practices. Final cuts will be September 5th. So a little bit later than normal on that. 80-man roster. The Colts, as of this recording, have not made any roster moves with that. We've seen some teams cut down from 90 to 80. If you do 80, you've got to split up your practices. Excuse me. If you do 90, you have to split up your practices right now.
Okay.
So when you do strength conditioning, when you get on the field in early August, you can't be all out there together. If you go down to 80, you can be all out there together. You know, you've got to cut to 80 by August 16th. You'll have 0 full padded practices between now and August 16th. If your guy 88 on the roster, yeah, well, what are you going to do? You lift weights really well. You did some nice 7-on-7 stuff maybe, but it's going to be difficult to make kind of that leap to get all the way up there. So those are some stuff that kind of stood out to me from labor aspect actions. Anything stand out to you?
No, the thing that I was going to ask, and I know we're going to get into it with the position battles, but when you give that breakdown of how the practices are going to happen, do you think it takes until the 17th until we start seeing those battles happen? Like, will you see any battles prior to that, or will it actually take the guys suiting up to see that?
No, that is a good question. I think it'll take until then. I just, maybe a little bit, but ultimately this game is played in full pads,
right.
and to have true separation, I think you've got to see that unfold. Multiple full padded practices, and something I'll ask Frank Reich and Chris Ballard. Maybe we'll talk with Chris Ballard later this week. I'm not expecting it before Friday. If we do, do you do more scrimmages within your team? That usually doesn't happen. You don't see multiple sessions of tackling in a training camp. You just don't.
Yeah,
against your own team.
Right, you're hurting yourself.
Right.
Potentially.
And I think that's how a lot of teams view it, and they're like, we're going to go tackle in preseason games. We're going to go tackle maybe in a joint practice. I think you'll see more of that. I mean, don't you have to? How do you officially evaluate stuff? Maybe you don't. Maybe it's just going to be the offseason where we're not going to do it. We'll evaluate off of wrapping up and not going to the ground and sorry about you, and we think we can make a somewhat, meaningful, observant, analysis on what your roster looks like. But, yeah, that'll be weird, man. So,
yeah, I'll be interested to see what all steps different teams take for the social distancing and stuff like that, and what the NFL might. I mean, the NFL doesn't have too much time, like you said. We report tomorrow, but seeing how baseball is going right now, do they start to implement certain things that they've not thought of yet? I don't know. Yeah,
and I think a couple other things that I wanted to hit on is and I believe I have this right, if players are testing positive for COVID, they'll go on an exempt list. So okay. I think we've had that debate before of do you treat it like it's just a sprained ankle and you're still on your 53-man roster for 2 weeks? You'll be on a special list. And if you bring up a guy from the practice squad, which is going to be bigger, 16 guys on a practice squad this year, which is smart.
Yep.
You don't have to then waive that guy, expose him to waivers, could be claimed by every team in the NFL like you would normally do. That guy can go right back to your practice squad. I believe I have that right.
Okay.
So I think that's smart. The NFL is, look, you can be a parity-driven league and try to be 32 teams on some level playing ground. Still trying to achieve that, and also just let's not be just crazy stickler. You're a Harvard professor about how the NFL operates. You can make some tweaks and have some flexibility here in 2020. So I think that's key. The NFL, it sounds like they've salvaged a bit of the cap hit for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing this year, and then about a $20 million decrease for next year. So certainly that'll impact the Colts a little bit. No injured reserve to return spots. I know that's something that people like to look at. Usually it's kind of 2 spots that you have, guys that go on IR but can come back. If guys go on IR this year, they can come back. So that's part of the new rule changes for this season. So
love to see that.
Yeah. Again, just trying to give everybody a little basis of what the rule stipulations are for this year. Fluid is the word of the year for 2020. Things will continue to be fluid, but don't expect, I guess what I'm saying is don't expect Kevin Bowen training camp reports for a little bit of time. I think we'll still be in a bit of a waiting period for that. And we should have some media availabilities, though, with Chris Ballard and Frank Reich, so a little bit of news items there. But I'm not expecting any sort of observant analysis from training camp for at least a week or so.
Gotcha.
Probably longer. Probably like mid-August, honestly.
Makes sense. Makes total sense to me. Position battles, we talked about it. We teased it. We talked about August 17th probably being the day we start to see that. The one a lot of people are going to have their eye on is the backfield, Marlon Mack, Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, and I guess before we get into them, Chris, I don't expect a whole lot of position battles. I don't. And I would say that even if this offseason wasn't weird. Like, the Colts don't have a lot of open starting jobs, to be honest. Okay, we're going to debate running back one. The starter's probably entrenched, but, how does it unfold over the season? Like, Phillip Rivers is quarterback one.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Pittman's probably going to be a wideout that maybe he's a two. Maybe he's going to play a lot. DeForest Buckner is obviously here to, stay. Trey Burton is certainly going to be a tight end that'll play a lot. Xavier Rhodes we'll get into on this list. But I guess what I'm getting at is last year you brought back 20 of 21 starters or 21 of 22, something like that. This year I think you bring back about 17 of 22, 18 of 22. I mean, you bring back a good amount.
Yeah.
I think Marlon Mack will be the starter, and I think Frank Reich has hinted at that. The question I have is just how does it unfold over a 16-game season, and how much does Jonathan Taylor eat into that? Something that I just got done hosting for Dan earlier today on our airwaves, and I think the Colts are in a unique place here, Chris, where I've mentioned it before. Rookies are hurt by this offseason. Undrafted free agents are severely hurt.
Without a doubt.
I think the Colts are a bit of an outlier, though, in comparing them to the other 31 teams with rookies. Hear me out. Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor, they could have been rookies in 1971, 1991, 2001. They'd still be asked to do a whole lot for you from day one, and they will be this season.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we should all of a sudden lower our bar of expectations for him. Like, Michael Pittman played with a whole lot of quarterbacks, different offensive coordinators. He's the son of a 10-year vet. He's pretty ready to make an impact day one in the NFL. Jonathan Taylor played in the best pro-style offense you could ask for a running back. Very mature, high character. He should be ready to go. There shouldn't be a big acclimation period for Pittman and Taylor. Sure, natural rookie stuff, yeah. But you play Jacksonville September 13th, you got to trust them.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look at the other rookies, I'm kind of like, well, Jacob Eason, I mean, unless COVID is crazy, and I saw Pete Carroll mention he's going to put his quarterbacks in different meeting rooms. That's interesting.
That's Pete Carroll.
Yeah, that's Pete Carroll, and we laugh about it. I laugh about it now. Maybe it will be. You look at the Miami Marlins, maybe Pete Carroll is smarter than us, but who knows? Danny Pintner, no, I'm not expecting him to, play, unless an injury occurs, of course. But what I'm getting at is, Julian Blackmon, ACL, no one is competing, I think, for an open starting job besides Pittman and potentially Taylor. So I think it's Marlon Mack early on, but a 15-11 carry split, a 14-10 carry split, that makes sense for me early. But I'm a big believer in Jonathan Taylor is knocking on that door. And I just think he gives you a different element to your offense. And Marlon Mack gives you a very nice element to your offense, which you want to tap into, and that's probably your most consistent aspect. But to raise the ceiling on this season, I think Jonathan Taylor could potentially eat into that as the season goes along.
Next on the list are two names that have been brought up multiple times during the podcast here this offseason, and that's Anthony Walker and Bobby Okereke.
Yeah, Chris, I'll go back to something I mentioned in February. Remember when Jim Irsay had that very impromptu combine interview session?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was on a Sunday afternoon at West 56. I'm like,
all the
Andrew Luck coming out of retirement? I'm like, what the hell is going on right now, Jim? And instead, he just wanted to complain about no primetime TV, which they ended up that didn't work out. And then he wanted to talk about how the combine should stay in Indy forever. So kudos to Jim, great effort, but unfortunately, half the results we haven't seen yet. But anyways, during that press conference, he talked about, like he always does, how he's more excited for this season than he's ever been. And he loves to mention the young players. Nelson and Leonard should be, or you would expect them to be, the first two names out of his mouth. They weren't. Bobby Okereke was the first name out of his mouth. That's Chris Ballard relaying to Jim what we think of this kid.
Mm-hmm.
That is high-ranking people in the Colts organization relaying to the owner what they think of Bobby Okereke. I like Anthony Walker a lot. Our listeners know that. I think, again, he is a better, more healthier version, I should say. I hope Rosie doesn't get some of my grammar. Of Clayton Geathers. Having said that, if you think this dude is a Pro Bowler, which they have said, you got to play him.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just let him, oh, yeah, we'll worry about that guy next year when he's on the third year of his 4-year rookie deal. So I don't know exactly how it looks. I don't know if it's Walker on rundowns, Okereke on pass downs, Okereke in the nickel, Walker off the field in the nickel. I don't know. But if you take the Colts at their word, Bobby Okereke's going to play more than he did last year. Having said that, Anthony Walker played, I think, every game but one, maybe every game last year, and he led the team in tackles. So you don't want to overlook that either. So I don't have a great answer for how it's going to look. I think Walker still starts, but is it like, Joseph Adai, not starting any game his rookie season, but rushing for 1,000 yards?
Mm-hmm.
Like Dominic Rhodes, I think, was the starter every game, and that was just seemingly veteran starts. So I don't know. But Bobby Okereke, to me, is going to play and going to play a decent amount.
The guys that are in front of him, the defensive ends, who, you're saying Walker starts on the linebacker. Who starts for defensive end this year?
So I think Danico Autry will start, and then Kemoko Turay will be. I am a firm believer this will be a combination. This is not one player taking Jabal Sheard's role. I know Brian Baker, the new D-line coach, said back in June or May, whenever we talked to him, that he thought 2 open starting jobs were there on the D-line. I would disagree with him, which is funny because he's the defensive line coach, so he could tell me to F off, which is totally fine, and he probably should. But I think DeForest Buckner and Justin Houston are the obvious ones he was referring to as starters. I still think Grover Stewart starts at the other defensive tackle spot. He's 330, played good football for you. Have him out there on rundowns. I get it. He's not playing all 3 downs, but I think he should be out there. The other defensive end is the job that I think is really up for grabs, which is the one we're talking about here. I like combination. If I'm going to make a pie chart, Chris, of what this looks like, I say 40% chance Autry wins the job, 25% Al-Qadim Muhammad wins the job. And again, this is the starter in the game book.
Right.
15% Tyquan Lewis, and the rest goes to Kemoko Turay. On rundowns, when you go to pass downs, that pie chart should say 98% Kemoko Turay. And then Autry can slide back inside, Lewis could slide back inside, Stewart can come off the field, Banagoo can come on the field, whatever. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Autry, Turay type of combination. Don't want to lose sight of Al-Qadim Muhammad, though.
For so long, it's no secret. Colts fans, we knew the offensive side of the ball. What we had, it was the defense that you were kind of skeptical of. I have not been this excited to see the Colts defense in a very long time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Really good point. Especially the front 7. I think people are really intrigued by. Yeah, I looked up the other day. The last time the Colts have had an all-pro defensive tackle, they weren't even in Indianapolis. I mean, it's just
yeah.
Buckner makes, and outside of Freeney and Mathis, an all-pro defensive lineman. Now, Freeney and Mathis are, Hall of Fame caliber guys, but yeah, there is an amount of intrigue with that unit that I think it's so needed. It's time. We talked about it's kind of time for the team in general. It's time for that defense to take the jump. You feel like the personnel's in place. They talk about the hot spots of their defense, nickel and will linebacker and 3 technique. Well, Buckner and Leonard and Moore. Okay. let's go. Insert your let's go gifts right here, folks. The time is now.
Let's talk about the Pro Bowler versus the second-year player, Rock Ya-Sin and Xavier Rhodes. What do you see there?
Yeah, I see a very fun NFL battle, Chris. You've got the young draft pick that showed a little something as a rookie, and then you've got the guy you've signed because another team who took him in the first round said, okay, you've done enough. We don't want to pay you what you're getting paid anymore. And now it's Xavier Rhodes at the age of 30. Somebody slapped him in the face. And what does that look like for him? Now people might misread this initially. I'm talking about the base defense here. Kenny Moore, Xavier Rhodes, and Rock Ya-Sin. That's probably your nickel group at corner when you have the three nickels on the field. Let's talk base defense. Kenny Moore's not coming off the field for me.
Nope.
I don't care that he's 5'9". He's too valuable. So who's your other outside corner? Is it Ya-Sin, the guy that's played the most snaps of anybody on your football team last year on the defensive side of the ball? Or is it Xavier Rhodes, who has started every single game since 2014?
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody's going to get a wake-up call. Somebody's going to get a, man, okay, I got it. I guess I got to wait till the nickel group comes on the field. I probably lean towards Rock here, but, Xavier's got a pedigree that you don't just want to slam the door shut on either. So that'll be, I think, a fun battle that maybe we haven't talked about enough that we should give a little bit more attention to.
I'm hoping with the schedule, knowing that Rhodes is going to be going up against a lot of receivers that he's seen in the past helps us. But to that point, he's fallen off, and some of those quarterbacks know how to attack him as well. So
for sure, and age, age at corner and age at running back. I mean, those numbers, they can get up there, and I think that's what you worry about. Is health has been pretty good for him. Health has been pretty good, but are you playing every Sunday? But the freak athlete we saw coming out of Florida State and what Matt Eberflus fell in love with at the Pro Bowl a handful of years ago, is that there? Have you lost a step?
Right.
Point blank. And when you lose a step at corner, that's like losing 10 steps walking down the sidewalk. I mean, you get exposed real quick, and it's not like the awkward of like, okay, can I get around this person at the next stoplight? It's one of those.
Let's switch over to the offensive side of the ball again and talk about the wide receiver depth chart.
Yeah, to me, Chris, this is not so much of a starting battle. This is more of depth chart of, T.Y. Hilton's your one.
Yep.
Pittman and Campbell and Pascal are your 2, 3, 4. But a lot of people like to talk about who's your 5, who's your 6. So, yeah, I think it's 4 guys for 2 spots. And I look at Marcus Johnson, I look at Reese Fountain, I look at Ashton Doolin, and I look at Desmond Patman. And I get those 4 for 2. And I look at the whole what I talked about last week of the guys that will make your 53-man roster this year. I think we'll have we trust those guys. We believe in them. They've shown us they can produce in an NFL game. Honestly, preseason or regular season. Obviously, ideally, you'd have regular season. But even in the preseason. And that's what worries me about Reese Fountain. A lot of intrigue. I think I have this right, Chris. He's played 7 NFL snaps, I believe. 6 of those 7, he's the last man on a kneel down. The guy that lines up,
yep,
10, 15 yards behind the quarterback. And then the other one is he drops the touchdown against Kansas City. Not ideal NFL film. I don't know if you're inviting the girl over and saying, hey, have you seen me? This is me right here. I don't know if you're doing that. You might hope that the college film is still good.
Mm-hmm.
And just maybe a nice jersey pick would probably be the route I would go there. But, in all seriousness, Marcus Johnson gave you 100 yards last year against Tampa Bay. It's those types of questions that I think will be interesting for NFL teams to answer. Do we trust this guy even though he hasn't shown it in a game?
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like the practice squad will be I think like 6 of your 16 players on your practice squad, it doesn't matter how many years they've played in the NFL. which is a nice bonus that you have this year. So that'll be something to watch for sure.
Rounding out the position battles this year, we want to talk special teams, little kicker battle.
How about it? The Colts got a kicker battle. Here in 2020. Did you see Blankenship? Rex Specs, did you see his picture that he had over the weekend?
No. Huh. Where do you have it on? Twitter?
I think Twitter, maybe Instagram as well. Pull it up. Look that up and let the people know who he took a picture with.
The GOAT.
Yeah.
Vinny. Yeah.
So
Butler.
Yeah, it looks like the Butler Bowl there.
Mm-hmm.
So Blankenship, Vinatieri. That's awkward. I don't know if it's awkward. Clearly not. I think this is the only real head-to-head battle, non-Anthony Walker, Bobby Okereke division. I guess Rocky Sean, Xavier Rhodes a battle, but this is a true battle. This is literally, two dudes that are just going to kick and kick and kick, and we'll see who becomes the week one kicker. My question for you is this, Chris. No preseason games. Rodrigo Blankenship has kicked in national titles, SEC championships. An SEC kicker, and I mean this in all seriousness, it might be the most pressure-packed college job of any football player.
Oh, yeah. Saturdays down south, 100,000 people every game.
Oh my!
Regardless, even at Kentucky, you'll go to a Kentucky game, which they've come up a little bit, but you're still getting 75,000 in the stadium.
Dude, and you miss a kick, and they're poisoning more than a tree.
Oh, yeah.
They're not messing around. So what I'm getting at is Blankenship has kicked in some very meaningful atmospheres. Having said that, it's different kicking in the NFL, man. It's different. And he's going to have no preseason games either. So, does that – Chase McLaughlin didn't miss an extra point last year. I think he was 18 of 23, I want to say, on field goals. Not bad. Not great, but not horrific by any means. He made 9 to 10 when he was with you. So that, I think, is a question of, can you just purely chart kicks, and at the end of camp you say, all right, Blankenship was 87% and McLaughlin was 83%, and Blankenship wins.
Right.
How much does Chase McLaughlin get for doing it in the NFL last year at an acceptable level? That's the question that I have there. So, yeah, kicker, man. I can't wait though. These are battles. These are legit battles, and there will be a time in a couple weeks where we will get into all of them, and we will actually have some movement on the depth chart, and I can't bleeping wait.
I'm so excited.
I really hope it works. Major League Baseball's got me worried, man.
Me too. It seems like the bubble sports are the ones that are lasting right now. But
before we get into Twitter questions, and this is me, and this is, I've talked a lot today, and so this is just me, just spur of the moment, something pop into my head. I think the NFL's got a better chance in Major League Baseball than this. I think the NFL, this is a great learning experience right here. Major League Baseball has not really had a great handle on testing, even back when they did the restart of spring training. It'd be like, well, we've kind of tested some guys. It's taken a while for these tests to get back. If you're going to play team sports and you're not going to have a bubble, you better damn have rapid testing ASAP. And we don't need to get into debate of this is the best thing for the public right now and all that. I'm not trying to get into any sort of debate about that. If you're going to do team sports and you aren't going to have a bubble, this has got to be on par. You've got to be testing guys. You've got to get results quick because you can't have Miami Marlin stuff.
No.
If you've got, 15 of 53 testing positive, now we're getting into some issues. You can't play doubleheaders in the NFL.
No.
You can play doubleheaders in Major League Baseball. So that's my mini little rant to slide in there. But, man, I hope it works. I love team sports.
It was so nice this weekend watching basketball and Sunday night baseball, some WNBA. I've honestly not sat down and watched a full Sports Center since about March.
Yeah.
So sitting down on Saturday morning and watching Sports Center, I was like, this is different.
Much to my wife's chagrin, I watched 2 full baseball games Saturday and Sunday. I mean, glory.
Yeah.
And I got Cheeks tweeting at me about the Pacers lineup. I mean, like, you're debating legit sporting event things.
Mm-hmm.
Now I want to do the same thing about the NFL. Please. I don't know who I'm saying please to, but please. Please.
All right, let's jump into some Twitter questions. Like you said, we have a couple left over from last week. Not as many as typical, but
we'll get back
some good ones.
Full throttle next pod.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, maybe, I don't know. I haven't talked to you about this, Chris. I don't think we'll do one Friday. I don't know what your schedule's looking like. Probably not. We'll probably stick to early next week. But, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens this week with the Colts and Chris Ballard media availability.
All right, we're going to kick off with an in-depth one from JJ. Colts strategy can be formulated based on these assumptions. A, the Colts have average or close to average talent. Many outsiders don't view many Colts as elite. B, many locals think the Colts are loaded with talent and few rookies will crack the starting lineup. Belief in A or B affects the approach. Which do you think the Colts believe, and which do you believe?
Well, I think the Colts probably think B. I think they've got solid talent. I think they've got good depth. But as I've said before, I need to see kind of the upper echelon talent. Like DeForest Buckner, you got to be an all-pro without Nick Bosa and without Eric Armstead next to you. Like,
yep.
That's a big deal. But I also would agree with B in the sense of I don't expect many rookies to crack the lineup. I don't. Like, I am steadfast in saying, tell me where the rookies are going to play besides Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor. You know, Julian Blackmon, okay, we'll see when he gets back off the whatever list he's on right now. Yeah, I mean that's a legit question of what his playing time will look like, but outside of Taylor and Pittman, I just don't think rookies are going to play a lot. Depth has gotten better. Are you elite enough to do something in January? That's a fair question, JJ.
This one's from Paul. Paul's biggest fear is that in a year without OTAs and team conditioning work, we're going to see a lot more than usual of serious football injuries in training camp. What's the return to real football in training camp after months of no football look like?
Yeah, Paul, I think you're spot on there. It kind of gets into what I said earlier about you're not putting on full pads till mid-August. I mean, that's unheard of in the NFL. Unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've touched on this on prior podcasts, Chris, but, we can go play pickup 5-on-5 at LA Fitness. NBA guys could do that if they wanted to. Yes, some restrictions on it, but you can still mimic that in practice. Phillip Rivers will not throw one pass outside of a red jersey until September 13th. Joe Burrow won't do that either. And I know some people will be like, well, Rivers didn't play in the preseason last year. Yes, that's true. Rivers has typically played in the preseason and actually played a decent amount. And I don't know, Phillip, but I would guess he'd like to play a little bit. Or at least he strikes me as a guy that's like, yeah, I'm good with taking the red jersey off and just getting in some sort of real live period. Look, every guy's fighting to make the team. But Ryan Kelly and Grover Stewart, at the end of the day, they still are wearing the same color jerseys. And they're not, pissed off at each other after 15 snaps and being like, mother bleeper, and it lead to some intense post-snap extracurriculars. So those are kind of all aspects of it of, do we see some awkward, sluggish moments early in the season? Do we see that?
Yeah.
I think it's a fair question.
It is. Before we get into Mack's question, he wanted to just share a little funny story first.
All right.
So him and his dad laughed during the draft because when they took Jonathan Taylor, obviously his name is Mack, his sister's name is Taylor, so now it's an all-time coincidence.
Oh, I got that. That is pretty good.
Yeah.
I actually like. I mean, Mack Taylor sounds like if you combine those names, that's a hell of a name.
Yeah,
you talk about a good fullback for Navy.
Oh, yeah.
Mack Taylor. I I love it.
But his question is, do you fear the Jaguars grabbing Trevor Lawrence next year and us falling far behind the 8 ball and having a top 10 quarterback for the next 3 to 5 seasons?
Well, I mean, that's a bit doom and gloom, Mac. Part of me thinks the Jaguars will screw it up. Somehow they'll screw it up. Well, I think they should have the number 1 overall pick. I mean, I don't know. Hell, Jacksonville typically beats the Colts like once a season. I don't know. Could they factor into winning a couple of games? I don't know. Jacksonville's weird.
They are weird.
But I think there is something you said for like, okay, Houston has their guy. Jacksonville has their guy. Tennessee, it's not the same sort of thing, but like they kind of have their guy. And the Colts are now where those other teams used to be in the AFC South. The Colts used to always have their guy. So I do think there's something to be said for that. But I'm not like, there are still a couple of hurdles to clear, I think, before Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, ideal marriage, 10-win season, falling out of bed sort of thing.
Quickly, to that point, before we came on the pod, speaking of Tennessee, did you see they're potentially close to a deal with Clowney?
Really? No, I have not seen. I mean, I was hosting today, so I haven't been perusing as much as usual. I
didn't dive into it or see who tweeted it because I was finishing up a work project, but I saw that they're potentially coming close to terms.
Really? What? Well, I mean, that would be big news. They seem to be a team that was always kind of one of them in the mix. Seattle even going back there, but I feel like Tennessee was one of the more popular teams, and John Robinson and Mike Vrabel have both commented on it publicly. That would be interesting for sure.
Let's jump back into it with the question from Steven. Robert Windsor has the braggadocious of a much higher draft pick, very brash. But can this kid actually be something? Have you seen much tape on him?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly watched tape on Rob, and what you see is a really quick first step for a man his size, and you see the number 1 trait that Matt Eberflus probably wants for his defensive linemen and anybody that plays defense for him, and that's not like cliche stuff. Like, that is legit why he was on the Colts board where he was. I'm curious about his size, Chris. He's not like Grover Stewart big.
Mm-hmm.
He's 290, so can he be the backup behind Grover? Is that Sheldon Day? I don't know if he's like your ideal 3 technique. I know a lot of people have said, like, let's debate him or Tyquan Lewis for the first spot, or for that final spot, I should say, in the defensive line group. Doing the Zoom call with him, I thought he was going to jump through the screen at me. I mean, he comes off as, I'm going to kick your ass sort of guy, which you obviously like in a defensive lineman. But, yeah, I wouldn't expect anything more than a rotational guy as a rookie. If he makes the team, I think there is debate on that.
Fun one from Joseph this week. Which 2 Colts would make the best tag team in the WWE, and which Colt would be the best pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC? Loves the podcast. Go Colts. Go Dogs.
Oh, boy. Go Dogs. Go Dogs. Joseph, are we thinking Bulldog? Georgia Bulldog? Butler Bulldog? What are we thinking there?
I know we've had a Georgia question before.
Maybe it's him.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 Colts would be the best tag team in WWE, and which Colt would be the best pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC? Great questions. WWE, Chris, I'm not a diehard. I don't know if you are.
No, it was one of those growing up. I think most young guys have that stage of their life. Like I watched it when I was younger.
Big, thick bodies, right? Isn't that kind of like, you don't have many small WWE wrestlers, do
I think it depends. Like, Rey Mysterio was really small and like would sling through the ropes, so he was one of my favorites growing up.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
And with a tag team, you can kind of have 2 different sizes. Like, they kind of feed off of each other, so they don't always have to be the same
big
size.
burly. Okay,
yeah.
That's fair. I mean, this is the cop-out. I just think Nelson and Leonard, I think their personalities are actually pretty, like, WWE-ish. Mm-hmm. Like, you could make something out of that. Is Charlie Arnold still on the WWE? Do you know who that is?
A local reporter from here.
Right, and then changed her last name.
Was Charlie Arnold her name here, or when she got to the WWE?
It was her name here. She went to North Central. She changed it to something.
I don't know.
What's the
you know who would know? Darius Leonard. Darius Leonard is a big wrestling fan.
Cheeks, what's the Lakers guard, the white dude?
Alex
Caruso. That's her last name. Okay, that's her stage name.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, oh boy, we're really offbeat. Okay, pound for pound fighter in the UFC.
It was WWE starting, then UFC.
Yeah, now we're on to UFC. Pound for pound fighter. I think Rocky Sin. I mean, 2-time wrestling state champ in Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously UFC has all different weight classes. I mean, Kenny Moore would probably scrap well. But that's it. I mean, I think you need like a very fit. I don't know about you, but I feel like in high school, like our best wrestlers were like linebackers or safeties on the football team, like that kind of body type transition. So yeah, I'll go with Rock.
From John, what is the bigger future defensive need, cornerback or defensive end? He is guessing he's a little. I guess I'm asking if you believe more in Yasin or Turay Banogu to be elite.
Yeah, we might. Now that I look at this, we might have asked this last week too. But whatever, John. I stand by pass rusher just because I keep on coming back to Chris. In this defense, the front means everything. If you're going to play as much zone as you do, if you aren't getting home in a quick manner, quarterbacks are too good, offenses are too good. They're going to tear apart those zones. That's my belief. Now, if you're going to go player, I think Yasin is a little bit more of a steady-ish guy, which I know some people might disagree with. I think Turay can be a little bit more volatile. Turay, it's a health question, maintain weight question,
right?
But he's got the biggest potential maybe of anybody on defense, which is crazy to say, but I think there is some validity to that statement. So yeah, John, actually, I think we asked that last week. Sorry about that. Whatever.
Colts Mexico. How is the NFL going to deal with the coaches and COVID? He just cannot get his head around a 70-plus-year-old coach and a millionaire also getting in planes and locker rooms with a bunch of 20-year-old millionaire athletes. There's just no way.
Yeah, I mean, Colts Mexico, this is a very fair question and something that we have not really talked about. I know Bruce Arians has been, speaking out a little bit about a cancer survivor and that. Couple things come to mind. You don't see NFL coaches going into locker rooms very often. After games, yes, but during the week, no. Like, they're kind of just in their meeting room. And now the question is, are NFL meeting rooms virtual? When you walk into that meeting room, do you immediately go to the third row of the meeting room so you're never within, 6 feet of that coach? I think those are very real questions. On the practice field, is a coach wearing a mask? That's fair. I saw an interview, because I'm a dad now, I know, I watch the nightly news. Dave Calabro was at Mount Vernon. The old Ben Davis coach is over there, Kirchner, and he's talking about how he's not as hands-on with the high school players as he used to be. Are you not as hands-on? In the NFL, some coaches are a little bit more hands-on than others, but, you can still stand 6 feet away. But, yeah, it's not like you have a union for coaches that you hear about as much as, like, the Players Association.
Exactly, yeah.
Very fair question. I don't have a great answer for you, Colts Mexico. Do you keep your higher risk coaches up in the booth? Is that a change that you make? This is on the list of things to worry about. It's probably not as high as we should maybe put it. Yeah, those are some of my thoughts to it. The biggest thing is obviously getting on planes. Now, for what it's worth, when I used to travel, I think it used to be players would get on in the back of the plane. They'd sit in the back. Coaches would then get on the front, and staff members, they'd sit in the front, and you'd never interact. Now, things can pass a little bit more via plane, obviously. I'm not an idiot. The Miami Marlins are probably an example of that. But, yeah, those are some of my general thoughts on it.
From Carter, he saw the video of Kemoko Turay on the Colts Instagram page, and his first thoughts was this has to be fast-forwarded. He knows it wasn't, but it looked really good. What is a realistic stat line for the 2020 seasons for Turay that includes sacks, hurries, tackles for losses, and games played?
I might have missed the Instagram. Do you know if it was like him and Robert Mathis training?
I saw him and Robert doing a lot of hand work this week.
Hand fighting stuff.
And it is quick. It's one of those where it's like, how do you even... They obviously know what they're doing, but they were moving very fast.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'm just trying to carry all the bags of groceries in from the car in one trip. That's all I care about with the hand fighting. I think the last part of that question is the most important. What is a realistic stat line for the 2020 season for Turay, including sacks, hurries, TFLs, and games played? Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to the last part. I think if he's on the field, he's going to produce, and probably more so in the sacks and hurries. Tackles for loss, it's more of an early down run stat, making plays in the backfield than it is a outright pass rushing stat. Because, I'm curious, what those waves, they always talk about playing in waves up front, a lot of rotating. Is Turay going to have the opportunity for a lot of tackles for loss?
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, I think, but sacks and hurries are real. So I'll always have he battled the weight issue as a rookie. He had the neck thing. If you handed Frank Reich, if you handed Frank Reich will play 13 games this year, he might say yes right now. If you handed Frank Reich Kemoko Turay is going to play 13 games for you, I think you sign it. I think you sign it right now. And if he plays 13 games, I'm going to say, 8.5 sacks. That might be a hair high on the over-under. I think that's fair. And the hurries, you'd probably double. You'd probably double those sacks. TFLs, again, I'm not as high on that, but still. There's probably not a more intriguing player gauging fans' interest than Turay this season.
And that's what I was saying going back to the beginning of the podcast. In terms of my excitement for the defense, there's some questions that if they get answered a certain way, I'm going to be through the roof excited.
Yeah. And there's positions that every fan base falls in love with. Mm-hmm. We adore the punter in this town. We adore the quarterback, obviously. We have an affinity for pass rushers because of Dwight and Roberts. So getting to that next one and it not being Bjorn Werner, yeah, that's the goal.
From Scotty this week, and Kevin, we're going to kind of probably break this down because I'm not necessarily sure what Scotty is asking here.
Yeah.
He's, of course, a Colts fan, but he's also a Twins fan. Welcome back, baseball. Twins looking really good out of the gate.
Right. Does Joe Mauer still play for the Twins?
He does not.
Okay, that's about that's about all I got. Kirby Puckett, and that's about all I got there, Scotty.
Who's got a better chance to win it all, Colts or Twins? The next question, if you had to pick for Rosie, greatest MLB player or LPGA player in history, which would you choose?
Wow. Jeez. Okay. All right. Let's start with the first. Colts or Twins winning it all?
Mm-hmm.
I know nothing about the Twins. Nothing.
The Twins.
What should I know?
They picked up Josh Donaldson on the hot corner. Nelson Cruz has been mashing the ball. A lot of young talent.
Nelson Cruz.
Solid pitching squad. They were probably in power rankings. If I had to guess, I'd have to remember back to it. Top 5 in Major League Baseball this year.
Oh, wow. So they're going to be good.
Yeah.
Okay. So they are, probably expected to be a little bit better than the Colts would be in the NFL?
Yes.
Well, I mean, 16 teams make the playoffs in Major League Baseball, which I think is outrageous, and this is me just bitching about that. I mean, that's you literally have the Bears would have made the playoffs last year in the NFL. The Broncos we would have Drew Lock or whoever the hell their quarterback was at the end of the season in the playoffs. Come on.
It's like basketball to the sense that you just have to be a little bit more above average of the rest of your side of the AL or NL.
Right. That's it.
And then if you get hot, I mean, that's how the Nationals won last year.
That's how I've lived my life, being a perfectly average male human being, and I'm satisfied with it so far. So, I mean, the Twins, it seems like they're going to be in the playoffs.
Yes.
The Colts, I think you hope, but it's not as much of a guarantee. Granted, the NFL is expanding the playoffs. Okay, I'll go with Twins, and then best Major League Baseball player of all time, I think, is Willie Mays. Best LPGA golfer of all time. In my 30 years, I'll be 31 in 2 months. I've never been asked this question in the history of me being on Earth. Annika Sorenstam.
Yeah.
Is that the only person you know that's played on the LPGA Tour? Or
no, like Michelle, the big ones, but if you,
Lorena Ochoa could have been.
If you got the opportunity to play at the Masters or in conversation, then I would imagine you're the greatest women's golfer of all time.
Sorenstam's damn good. And probably retired too early for a lot of people's sake. But, Scotty, wild question. Wild.
This week from Trenton, the Colts have, in his opinion, the strongest roster from 1 to 53, but lack the top-end star talent that the other teams do. However, with the unpredictability this season with COVID, where you will see teams lose some star players 4 weeks at a time, could that possibly give the Colts an edge in some games this season?
Yeah. Who was this? Was this Trenton?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to look at it. I guess that makes sense. You know, I to be honest with you, I haven't given that like too much thought. Yeah, I mean, like if you lose your star player, it just got really dark outside.
Yeah,
man. Gosh, great. This will be awesome. You know, it's something to the effect of like, yeah. I guess Trent's right. You know, losing your star players would be like Houston. If Houston loses Watt and Watson, that's a huge blow. If the Colts lose Rivers and Buckner, yeah, it's a big blow, but do they have the run game to kind of, I don't know, make up for it if it would be Colts and Texans that week? That's one way to look at it. So, yeah, that is that's a fair way, Trenton. And I guess I probably need to take a closer look at just where does the Colts' depth compare to everyone else in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty good. I do.
do.
It's going to be, man, this is going to be weird. It's going to be fascinating. Fascinating.
Well, speaking of fascinating, we got a great question from Stan. One that made me laugh. I actually shared it with some coworkers before coming on here. He says, I know that it is far, far too early to ask you to react to the 2021 quarterbacks, but to simplify things, if you couldn't get Andrew Luck Pepsi, which he thinks is Trevor Lawrence, would you rather get Diet Deshaun Watson, Justin Fields, or Andrew Luck Zero, Trey Lance?
Look at this. How creative is this? Read those all. And I'm not a very soda, pop, whatever people call it. I really don't drink them at all. But rattle those off again, okay?
So he's comparing Andrew Luck Pepsi to Trevor Lawrence. So Pepsi's obviously high on Stan's list of carbonated beverages.
Yeah.
Diet Deshaun Watson, who would be Justin Fields.
Gotcha.
Or Andrew Luck Zero, Trey Lance.
Wow. That's interesting. Trey Lance, I would assume our listeners are diehard enough. They probably heard the name. He's the North Dakota State quarterback that people are obsessed with right now. Didn't throw an interception last year in college football. Chris, I don't care if you're playing at Hanover. That's a notable stat.
Yep.
Like,
oh, yeah.
How do you not just have one? This is wild. Why do you think Trevor Lawrence is impossible to get? Isn't he going 1 overall? Like, he's going to be number 1 pick.
Yeah.
The Colts are not going to be that bad. God, if they are. Ugh. And then they're not going to be able to trade up for that. So I can't go there. I probably like the Andrew Luck Zero Trey Lance. Oh boy, big hiccup.
Based on how our offense is built already, with Fields coming in.
That's a good way to look at it. I like running quarterbacks. I like quarterbacks that can make some things happen with their feet. I don't know if I like them. Deshaun Watson has got no fear with his body.
Mm-mm.
No fear, which is so commendable, so respectable. But I'm just kind of like, oh, man. Ugh. Jeez, is that guy going to make it? Who's their backup? AJ McCarron? I mean, like, you know, that's kind of the feeling I have when I watch the Texans. I watched Justin Fields a decent amount last year. I don't think I have the same sort. I don't think he runs that much.
He doesn't. He gets portrayed as a mobile quarterback, I think, just because he's a black athlete. But
right.
he's actually is a very good pocket passer. And going back to your interception comment, I think until one of the later games, and I could check, he didn't have an interception thrown either.
Fields?
Yeah.
Which is
and
damn impressive.
For playing in the Big Ten.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess Lance is kind of more of your pro system, and Carson Wentz and Easton Stick, I think, is the other North Dakota State quarterback in the league, like that sort of thing. Lance is intriguing. I'm all about intriguing. I'm all about curious. I need to watch North Dakota State, whatever conference you're in. Please play football this year. Let's get Notre Dame and North Dakota State to play a game.
They're in an area of the country that's pretty socially distant. They should be all right.
You're right. I think they're in Butler. They've played Butler. I'm pretty sure they're in Butler's conference.
Really?
Yeah. Almost, which I saw something come across my timeline today. Who would have tweeted about that? Probably Rakestraw.
Yeah, that's a good guess.
About Butler football. Let me see if I can find this.
Okay.
Nah, it wasn't him. That's shocking to me. So yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see it happen.
All right. Well, Stan's question wraps up this week's Twitter questions for the podcast.
Love it. Thank you, Stan. Appreciate that. Good to have you back. Shorter pod this week. Like I said, we should hear from Chris Ballard at some point this week. I think maybe Friday is the thought process. Maybe on a Friday pod. That's a strong maybe. We'll see. But if not, early next week to come back and kind of go over what Ballard had to say. And we'll start to get into some Zoom-type stuff with the Colts here starting next week.
Love it.
All right, man. He's Chris Presley. Cheeks in studio as well. I'm Kevin Bowen. Appreciate y'all for listening to this edition of Kevin's Corner. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Don't hesitate to reach out. And everybody have a great week. And we'll be back at some point with another edition of Kevin's Corner.